My parents disowned me for following my dreams, then tried to ruin my life when I became successful. From the moment I picked up my first camera at 16, I knew photography wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. My parents, however, didn't share my enthusiasm. "It's not a real career," my dad scoffed when I showed him my portfolio. "You'll end up broke and living in our basement." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was what I was meant to do. While other kids talked about college majors and career plans, I spent my weekends capturing candid moments at local events, building a small but loyal client base. When the time came to apply to colleges, I made the bold choice to submit an application to an art school with a renowned photography program. My acceptance letter arrived a week later, and for the first time in years, I felt like my future was falling into place. My parents were less than thrilled. "You got into state," my mom said, holding up the acceptance letter from the university they'd been pushing me toward. "You could major in business or engineering. Something practical." "I don't want to go to state," I replied, my voice trembling. "I want to go to the art school. This is what I'm passionate about." Passionate. The word seemed to ignite something in my dad. "Passion doesn't pay the bills," he snapped. "You're throwing your life away for a pipe dream." The argument dragged on for weeks, with my parents making their position abundantly clear. If I pursued photography, I was on my own. No financial support, no safety net. It was the ultimate ultimatum. When I packed my bags and left for art school that fall, they didn't even say goodbye. Art school was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The classes pushed me creatively, and the connections I made opened doors I never could have imagined. By my junior year, I was interning for a prominent wedding photographer, and by the time I graduated, I had enough clients to start my own business. Still, the sting of my parents' rejection lingered. Every holiday I spent alone, every family event I wasn't invited to. It was a constant reminder of what I'd sacrificed to follow my dreams. 3 years later, my cousin Lisa invited me to her engagement party. Lisa and I had always been close, and despite the rift with my parents, she made a point of keeping me in her life. The party was lavish, held in the backyard of her fiancé's family's sprawling estate. I arrived with my camera, intending to take a few candid shots as a gift for the happy couple. The moment my parents saw me, their expressions froze. My mom whispered something to my dad, who shook his head and turned away. "Don't let them ruin your night," Lisa said, pulling me into a hug. "They'll come around eventually." As the evening wore on, I found myself chatting with Lisa's fiancé's family. They were genuinely interested in my work, asking about the types of photography I did and the places I traveled for shoots. At some point, Lisa joined the conversation. "You know," she said, grinning, "my cousin here is a total rock star. She makes more money than most people I know." I laughed, brushing off the comment, but Lisa wasn't done. "Seriously," she continued, "she cleared 6 figures last year. Can you believe that? Doing what she loves." The room fell silent. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mom stiffen. My dad's face turned red as he glanced in my direction. "Is that true?" my mom asked, her voice sharp. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I've been doing well," I said cautiously. "Well enough to help out your family," my dad interjected, his tone accusatory. The sudden shift in the conversation caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I asked. My mom stepped forward, her expression a mix of indignation and entitlement. "We supported you for 18 years, she said. "Fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. And then you threw it all away to chase your little dream. Don't you think it's time you gave something back?" "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice rising. "We're not asking for much," my dad cut in. "Just $100,000. It's the least you can do after everything we sacrificed for you." I stared at them, stunned. "Are you serious? You disowned me. You told me I was on my own, and now you're asking for money?" "We're your parents," my mom said, as if that explained everything. Lisa tried to intervene, but my dad waved her off. "This is a family matter," he said. "Funny," I shot back, my voice trembling with anger. "I wasn't family when you cut me out of your lives. But now that I'm successful, you want a piece of it?" The tension in the room was palpable. My mom's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or frustration. My dad's jaw tightened, his pride clearly wounded. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "One day you'll need us, and we won't be there." "I've been just fine without you," I replied. As I walked away, Lisa grabbed my arm. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It's not your fault," I said, forcing a smile. "But this changes everything." As I drove home that night, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. I'd spent years longing for my parents' approval, but now that I had it, it felt hollow. Their love, it seemed, came with a price tag, and I wasn't willing to pay. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. After the engagement party, I couldn't stop replaying the confrontation with my parents in my mind. It wasn't just their demand for money that stung. It was the sudden realization that they saw me as a financial asset, not their child. For a few days, I debated whether to reach out to them. Part of me still craved their acceptance, but another part knew that their interest in me now was conditional. Ultimately, I decided it was better to focus on the life I'd built for myself rather than dwell on the past. A week later, Lisa called me. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked hesitantly. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed me. "I wanted to give you a heads up," she continued. "Your mom's been calling family members, saying all kinds of things about you." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She's telling people you've been hiding your success and refusing to help them after everything they did for you," Lisa explained. "She's trying to make you out to be the villain." I sighed, rubbing my temples. Why am I not surprised? "I wanted to tell you because Aunt Karen called me, asking for your side of the story," Lisa said. "It's spreading fast." "Thanks for letting me know," I replied, my frustration growing. Lisa hesitated. "There's one more thing. Your dad mentioned he might talk to the press." "What?" I nearly dropped my phone. "Yeah," Lisa said. "He's claiming you owe them for your rise to fame, and that they're the reason you're successful." That night, I scrolled through social media, half expecting to see my name trending for all the wrong reasons. While nothing had surfaced yet, the thought of my private life being aired out publicly made me feel sick. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. A family friend had shared a post from a local news outlet. The headline read, "Estranged parents of successful photographer demand support. She owes us everything." My heart sank as I clicked on the article. It was filled with quotes from my parents, painting themselves as the victims of my selfishness. They claimed they had supported my dreams from the start and only cut ties because of my ingratitude. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mentor, Dana. "Emily, have you seen this?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Yeah, I just read it," I said. "Do you want me to release a statement on your behalf?" Dana offered. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." I appreciated her support but wasn't sure if addressing the article publicly would make things better or worse. "Let me think about it," I said. Over the next few days, I received an outpouring of support from friends and colleagues who knew the truth. Lisa even posted a public statement defending me, but it only seemed to fuel my parents' resolve. A week later, my mom called me for the first time in years. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emily, we need to talk," she said, her tone a mix of pleading and anger. "Do we?" I replied, my walls already up. "This isn't how family should act," she said. "Exactly," I shot back. "Family doesn't disown you and then demand money when you're successful." She sighed. "We didn't mean to hurt you, but you have to understand. We sacrifice so much for you. Is it so wrong to want something in return?" "It's wrong to lie about me to the press," I said. "And it's wrong to try to guilt me into giving you money after cutting me out of your life." "We didn't cut you out," she argued. "You left us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You told me I was on my own. That was your choice, not mine." The conversation ended with my mom insisting that I think about what's right, and me feeling more disillusioned than ever. That evening, Lisa called again. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "What now?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Your parents are threatening to sue you," she said. "They're claiming they have a right to your earnings because they invested in your upbringing." The absurdity of it all was almost laughable, but I knew better than to underestimate them. If they were willing to go to the press, who's to say they wouldn't try to take legal action? I decided it was time to take control of the narrative. With Dana's help, I drafted a public statement outlining the truth. How my parents had disowned me, how I'd built my career on my own, and how their recent actions were a blatant attempt to exploit my success. The statement went live the next morning, and the response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from friends, clients, and even strangers who had experienced similar situations. But just as I started to feel a sense of relief, a new notification popped up on my phone. It was an email from my dad. The subject line read, "You've left us no choice." As I opened it, my heart raced. The contents of the email made it clear. This was far from over. The email from my dad was as manipulative as it was unsettling. He claimed they were preparing to sue me for breach of familial obligation and unpaid reparations. It was filled with vague legal jargon that seemed cobbled together from a quick internet search. But one line stuck out: "We'll go as far as we need to ensure justice is served." I forwarded the email to Dana, who immediately connected me with a lawyer she trusted. We reviewed the email together the next day in her office. "This is more a scare tactic than a legitimate legal threat," the lawyer, Mark, explained. "They don't have a case. Parents don't have legal grounds to demand money from an adult child simply for raising them. Even if they go through with it, I don't want this dragging on," I said. "What can we do to stop them?" Mark nodded. "We'll send a formal cease and desist letter to make it clear they're treading on thin ice. If they persist, we'll be prepared to counter with a defamation lawsuit." It was a relief to have a plan, but the emotional toll was harder to shake. My parents' actions felt like the final nail in the coffin of a relationship I'd spent years mourning. The cease and desist letter went out the following day. For a while, it seemed to work. My parents went silent, and I allowed myself to believe they'd finally backed off. But 2 weeks later, I received another email, this time from a journalist. The journalist claimed they were working on a follow-up article about my parents' heartbreaking estrangement from me. He asked if I wanted to comment before the story went to print. I forwarded the email to Dana and Mark, my frustration mounting. "They're not letting this go," I said. "It's time to go public," Dana replied. "You've been trying to protect their reputation, but they're using it against you. Share your side of the story before they can twist it any further." The idea of airing my family drama publicly made me uncomfortable, but I knew Dana was right. If my parents were willing to lie to the press, I had to set the record straight. I wrote a detailed post on my business's social media pages, outlining the truth. How I'd been disowned for pursuing photography, how I'd built my career without their support, and how their recent actions were attempts to exploit my success. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people commented, sharing their own stories of toxic family dynamics and offering support. Clients, colleagues, and even strangers rallied around me, condemning my parents' behavior. But the most surprising reaction came from someone I hadn't expected. My younger brother, Alex. We hadn't spoken since I left for art school. He'd been a teenager at the time, and I'd assumed he'd sided with our parents. But now, he reached out with a message that caught me off guard. "I'm sorry for everything they've put you through. Can we talk?" I hesitated before responding. Alex had been a bystander in all of this, but I couldn't ignore the possibility that he might genuinely want to reconnect. We met at a cafe later that week. Alex looked older, more mature, but there was a nervous energy about him that reminded me of the little brother I used to know. "I should have reached out sooner," he said, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I didn't agree with how they treated you, but I didn't know how to stand up to them." "I get it," I said, though the hurt lingered. "But why now?" He took a deep breath. "Because I think they're about to do something even worse." "What do you mean?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "They've been talking about selling a story to a tabloid," he admitted. "They're planning to claim you abandoned them after they sacrificed everything for you." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what he was saying. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not right," he said, his voice firm. "And because I don't want to be part of their lies anymore." His words struck a chord with me. For years, I'd felt like an outsider in my own family, but hearing Alex take a stand gave me a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. Alex nodded. "They'll hate me for this, but I'm done living in their shadow." As we left the cafe, I couldn't help but feel a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Alex's decision to come forward was a step in the right direction, but I knew the fight with my parents was far from over. And as much as I wanted to believe they'd finally give up, a part of me knew they were just getting started. Alex's warning lingered in my mind as the days passed. While his decision to reach out meant a lot, it also confirmed my worst fears. My parents were willing to stoop even lower to get what they wanted. A week later, the storm broke. I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone. Texts, emails, and social media tags all pointed to one thing: a sensational tabloid article featuring my parents. The headline read, "Betrayed by our daughter. Parents of famous photographer speak out." I scrolled through the article, my stomach turning with every word. My parents claimed they had supported me through thick and thin, sacrificing their own dreams to help me succeed. They painted a picture of a dutiful family, blindsided by my selfish decision to cut ties and leave them behind. Worse, they included fabricated details about my life, insinuating that I'd used their money to fund my career. They even claimed that I'd refused to visit my ailing father, a blatant lie designed to garner sympathy. The public reaction was swift and divided. Some people expressed outrage at my supposed betrayal, while others called out the inconsistencies in my parents' story. Among the chaos, one thing was clear: I couldn't ignore this any longer. That afternoon, I met with Dana and Mark to strategize. "They crossed a line," Mark said, his tone firm. "We need to respond quickly and decisively." Dana nodded. "You've already built goodwill with your earlier statement. Now's the time to double down." We decided to issue a formal rebuttal through a trusted media outlet. The goal was to discredit the tabloid story while maintaining my professionalism and integrity. The next day, my interview went live. I explained the truth about my estrangement from my parents, detailing the events that led to our fallout. I also presented evidence, old emails, texts, and even receipts that debunked their claims about supporting my career. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People rallied behind me, condemning the tabloid for publishing such a one-sided story. But as the dust settled, I received an unexpected call from Alex. "You need to know something," he said, his voice tense. "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. "They're not done," he said. "Mom's been talking to a lawyer. She's trying to file a lawsuit, claiming emotional damages from your abandonment." I groaned, frustration bubbling to the surface. "This is insane. Do they even have a case?" "No," Alex said. "But you know them. They'll drag this out just to make your life harder." As absurd as the situation was, Alex was right. My parents had already proven they were willing to escalate things beyond reason. Mark confirmed that their proposed lawsuit was frivolous, but he warned me that fighting it would still cost time and money. "I can't believe this is my life," I muttered during one of our meetings. Mark gave me a sympathetic look. "Unfortunately, some people weaponize the legal system out of spite, but we'll handle this." Despite the stress, I tried to focus on the things that mattered: my work, my friends, and the newfound connection with Alex. To my surprise, he became a source of strength during this ordeal. He publicly defended me online, even confronting our extended family members who sided with our parents. "I should have done this years ago," he said during one of our conversations. "Better late than never," I replied, grateful for his support. But just as I thought we were making progress, another curveball came my way. I received a letter in the mail, this time from my parents' lawyer. It wasn't a lawsuit, but a settlement demand. The letter claimed that if I paid them $100,000, they would drop all legal threats and stop speaking to the media. It was extortion, plain and simple. I forwarded the letter to Mark, who confirmed my suspicions. "This isn't a settlement, it's a shakedown," he said. "We can counter this with a formal complaint for harassment." "Let's do it," I said, determined to end this nightmare once and for all. As Mark prepared our next move, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. My parents' actions had caused me pain, but they'd also shown me the strength I didn't know I had. And as much as they tried to drag me down, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to let them win. But little did I know, the next twist in this saga would come from someone I least expected. As Mark filed the harassment complaint, I felt a sliver of hope that this ordeal might finally end. The settlement demand had been their most desperate attempt yet, and I was determined not to give in. But life had one more surprise in store for me. One evening, as I was editing photos for a client, I received a call from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was another reporter or spam. But when the same number called again 5 minutes later, I answered, curiosity outweighing caution. "Hello?" I said hesitantly. A woman's voice came through, trembling but clear. "Is this Emily?" "Yes. Who's calling?" The line went silent for a moment before she spoke again. "My name is Karen. I'm your mom's half-sister." I froze, trying to process her words. I had no idea my mom even had a half-sister. "I'm sorry," I said cautiously, "but why are you reaching out to me now?" Karen hesitated before answering. "Because I've been following what's happening with your parents, and there's something you need to know. Something they've kept hidden for years." We agreed to meet the next day at a small cafe on the edge of town. Karen was in her late 50s, with kind eyes that seemed weighed down by years of unspoken truths. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we sat down. "Of course," I replied, still skeptical. "What is it you wanted to tell me?" Karen took a deep breath. "Your parents didn't disown you because of your career. That was just the excuse they used. The real reason is much more complicated." She explained that my parents had been in financial trouble long before I left for art school. My father had made a series of bad investments, and my mother had racked up significant credit card debt. "They were counting on you to help bail them out," Karen said. "When you chose photography instead of law school, it shattered their plans." I felt a wave of anger and disbelief. "So they disowned me because I wouldn't become their financial safety net?" Karen nodded, her expression somber. "But there's more. Your father. He took out a second mortgage on their house and used your name to co-sign it. That's why they've been so desperate to get money from you. They're drowning in debt." Her words hit me like a freight train. Not only had my parents disowned me, but they'd also stolen my identity to secure a loan. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because they're planning to declare bankruptcy," Karen said. "And when they do, the debt will fall on you." I couldn't stay silent knowing what they're about to do. I left the cafe feeling a mix of gratitude and fury. Karen had given me the missing piece of the puzzle, but it also meant the situation was far worse than I'd imagined. Mark confirmed Karen's claims after a quick investigation. The mortgage debt was real, and my name was indeed tied to it. "They've left a paper trail," he said. "We can prove fraud, but it's going to get messy." The legal battle that followed was exhausting. My parents denied everything at first, but the evidence was undeniable. They eventually agreed to a settlement, forfeiting any claim to my finances in exchange for me dropping the fraud charges. It was a hollow victory. The people who were supposed to love and protect me had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Months later, as I was finally starting to rebuild my life, I received another unexpected letter. This time, it was from Alex. "I wanted to let you know that I've cut ties with Mom and Dad," the letter read. "I can't support what they've done to you, or to me. They used my name for a smaller loan, too. I'm sorry for not standing up sooner. I hope someday we can truly be a family again." His words brought tears to my eyes. While I'd lost my parents, I'd gained something even more valuable, the chance to rebuild a relationship with my brother. And as for my parents, the last I heard, they were living in a small apartment, still struggling to make ends meet. I couldn't bring myself to forgive them, but I also couldn't bring myself to hate them. In the end, their downfall was their own doing. As I walked into my studio one morning, I noticed a package sitting on my desk. It was from Alex, a framed photo of us as kids, with a note that read, "Here's to new beginnings." I smiled, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. Sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about the people who choose to stand by you, even when it's hard. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free.